Superman has probably one of the most recognizable movie themes of all time. It was written by John Williams for the 1978 Superman movie, and since then it's become pretty inseparable from the character. Even the Zack Snyder Superman films, which have a much darker tone and take on the character, still incorporate this theme. If you listen to the Man of Steel soundtrack, for example, you can hear the same iconic intervals and harmonic shape woven into Superman's theme. And it's interesting to think about those films because they seem to have come almost out of a different cultural era than we're living in today. In the mid-2000s and into the early 2010s, it was pretty trendy for film adaptations to lean into this kind of like darker, grittier take. You kind of saw this in the Daniel Craig James Bond films, the Dark Knight trilogy, and then of course Man of Steel and its sequels. I think coming out of that era, a lot of people look back on those films as very heavy in tone and also heavy-handed in its themes and symbolism, and at times also very cynical. I think a lot of that style of film was built upon the subversion of tropes, and I think a lot of people are kind of yearning for something that is maybe a little bit more pure and optimistic, especially as an escape from the world that we're living in today. There's a new Superman film being released next summer, and leaning into this sentiment, it's been very much billed as a return to classic form for the character. I think the working title for a long time was literally Superman Legacy. The trailer just came out, and of course it features that classic John Williams Superman theme from 1978. So yeah, let's check it out. Okay, I just want to mention that it already feels a lot lighter in tone. There's a similar scene to this in Man of Steel where Superman crashes into like a mountain. But it feels very different, and I think a lot of that difference in tone actually has to do with how the sound is mixed. In Man of Steel, the sound is all presented from Superman's perspective, so whether it's on a close-up shot of Superman flying or a faraway shot of Superman crashing into the mountain, it never changes perspective or breaks that immersion, whereas here, the sound is not from Superman's perspective, but from the camera's perspective. So at first it's basically silent, or you can just hear like the sound of the wind in this like Arctic setting. And then as Superman gets closer to making impact, you actually hear him make his entrance into that camera's perspective. It's more similar to what you would hear if this was kind of like a gag or a joke. And the scene has a bit of that comedic timing just because of the perspective that the sound is presented from. And I think that just helps establish the lighter tone of this take on the character, especially in direct contrast to Man of Steel. Okay, lone solo electric guitar take on the John Williams Superman theme. That electric guitar sound, I think, has a lot of nostalgia built in. Of course, we're kind of living in this era of nostalgia, and its retro tone is really playing into the kind of vibe that this film is trying to establish overall. And even if you look at the logo that they have there for the Daily Planet, it looks very retro, but almost kind of like a retro projection of the future. Even like the visual language of the titles that they show here with the stars in the background and the glow around like the metallic letters feels really nostalgic to me. Somehow it reminds me of like the trailers that you would see at the beginning of VHS tapes from the 90s. So yeah, the trailer overall is really drawing you into this like nostalgic feeling, and the texture and the melody of the soundtrack are a huge part of that. Yeah, so they kind of timed Superman's whistle there with the slide of the electric guitar. I think that electric guitar sound feels very free and liberating here. And I think it has kind of to do with how effortlessly you can slide between notes on the guitar, and also because of how notes on the electric guitar will just kind of ring out almost in like perpetuity. So that sustain also feels very effortless. I've seen people compare this to the Jimi Hendrix version of the American National Anthem from Woodstock. I think actually the electric guitar here is a lot cleaner. Jimi Hendrix's National Anthem is full of like texture and grit. I think that's actually a big part of what makes it so brilliant, is just all of the textures that he's able to pull out of the guitar in that solo. But here the electric guitar sounds a lot more pure and has more of this sense of innocence, which I think is really effective for establishing a new take on the character and a more hopeful tone.
Krypto. Home. Take me home.
Okay, now we're in full-on trailer mode. So you've got, of course, the heavy drums, the triplets that you hear all the time in trailer music. The brass here is kind of bringing us a lot closer to that triumphant fanfare of the original Superman theme. And all of the visuals here are really kind of pushing us in the direction of something lighter, more vibrant. All of these shots here are so colorful and dynamic and just really feel like they're breathing life into what you're watching here at the same time as the music really kicks in. Yeah, awesome. I love how all of the villains look over the top, but they don't look out of place, I think, because of the tone here that's being established by the kind of visual language. It's very oversaturated, and there's those like wide, sweeping, dynamic shots that just kind of, yeah, makes everything feel a little bit over-exaggerated. And of course, the music here is very overdramatic. It's a big contrast from Man of Steel and the other Zack Snyder Superman films, where the soundtracks were more understated and often more rhythmically driven as opposed to melodically driven. And I wanted to mention that I actually love those films, all three of them. I consider them pretty formative for me. And I think a big reason why I love those films is because they're cohesive. Yes, the soundtracks are more understated and rhythmically driven, but that pairs really effectively with the more muted color palette and more dramatic lighting and cinematography, and also the heavier themes and darker stories. And I think what I'm really interested in here about this new Superman film is not specifically this tone that they're going for here, but just the fact that it feels deliberate. The music, the casting, the costumes, the color grading, they're all working together towards the same vision, and that's kind of what you really need in order to create a compelling movie experience. Okay, awesome. And they brought back the whistle at the end, of course, to match with that last resolution. Very nice, hopeful, uplifting end to the trailer. Okay, so I've been thinking a bit about this choice to return to that classic Superman theme. And it's interesting because I think in a certain context, this could be seen as like a soulless, strategic corporate move. Everyone remembers this theme, so let's play off of the nostalgia in order to get people to buy movie tickets. It's kind of the approach that's driving a lot of movie studios' decisions these days. And you could even say that was driving the decision to even make another Superman film now. I think a recent example of this was the Harry Potter series that they're developing at HBO. There was some kind of trailer or announcement that was using the original Harry Potter theme from the movies. Also written by John Williams, funny enough. And I think a lot of people were pointing to this as like an indicator that the Harry Potter series doesn't really have any substance. That at its core, it's really just about preying on your nostalgia for those movies in order to get you to watch something new on their streaming platform. I think in the case of this film, you could probably make more of a justification for it, just because that theme is tied more so to a specific character, and it's the same specific character that we're seeing in this film, whereas the Harry Potter themes are tied more so to a specific cinematic universe where the new Harry Potter series is like a reboot and therefore wouldn't be in the same cinematic universe. I think a bit about like James Bond and how, you know, that role has been not only recast, but the movies have kind of been reshaped and gone through different tones and different eras, but kind of still kept the same original James Bond theme. It's always very interesting seeing how that theme kind of gets reinterpreted or used in different creative ways throughout those eras. I can kind of see a similar thing here happening with Superman, as you know, the mantle is passed to different actors, and as the character kind of gets different reinterpretations that reflect the era that the movie is released in. And I also see Man of Steel as part of that lineage because, like I mentioned before, it still does incorporate that classic Superman theme, even if it's in a little bit more of an indirect or deconstructed way. So yeah, that's kind of my take on this trailer and on the return of John Williams' Superman theme. And let me know some of your thoughts. Do you think it's effective for them to reuse this iconic theme here? Or would you rather see them leave that in the past and move on to something fresh for this new take on the character? Thanks for watching and listening with me, and I'll see you soon.